wanted to get in there with a home inspection. And this is pretty cool, because pay attention to this, because we can strategically plan our inspections to protect our buyer and our buyer's interests and our buyer's budgets, right? So I was like, well, let me get in and get this home inspection scheduled immediately the next day. So if the home inspection wasn't acceptable, then I didn't have to have that buyer spend money on the HVAC and the CL 100 letter, right? Either we were going to move forward or not. So I reached out to the listing agent and I said, hey, great news. We got the home inspector scheduled for tomorrow at XYZ time. And first of all, it took the listing agent like 12 hours to get back to me, which is one of my biggest pet peeves of lack of communication in this business. If you're not going to communicate, don't be in it. But when they did get back with me, they're like, oh yeah, that's not convenient for the tenant. I said, I am giving you a 24-hour notice. Landlord-Tenant Act says that all we need to do is give you a 24-hour notice to get in the property. They should know the house just went under contract. Why would they not be okay with letting people in? They're moving, it's inconvenient. And I did put on the list in the MLS that only showing Saturday and Sunday. I said, sweetie. I was like, showings are completely different from contractual obligations between buyer and seller. I said, you're interfering into a contract at this point. I had to navigate around it, because sometimes, you guys, we can push as much as we want, but you have to go back to the buyer and say, hey, buyer, how bad do you want this house? Either we're going to have to figure out how to get it done or not. We did figure it out. We ended up closing on it, but it was one of the most painful, like, navigating through this due diligence. It was very odd, and I've been doing this for a long time, and that one was extremely painful and odd.
Can I ask you, was the agent broker in charge?
No.
So why didn't you call the broker in charge?
Because at this point, the buyer wanted the property really bad, and the buyer, and we got in, so I didn't need to escalate. That was my backup. We ended up getting in the property and being able to do our inspections and ended up closing. But there were many times that I was through this due diligence that I was like, do I need to call your broker? And then the next step happened, but it was painful. And even, it was an out of area agent, 1. 2, the broker that I've dealt with before, I've on other things with other agents, took like a week to get back with me. So I already knew when this started coming up what I was going to end up dealing with anyway. So I really tried to navigate this as best I could for the buyer, because it was me. I'd been like, let's find another house. But she didn't want to. It was stressful up until the end.
Do you typically, is it just for like as is, or do you typically schedule the home inspection on a day and then the other 2 inspections on that day?
So for as is, especially when you're dealing with as is that you can visually see a lot of issues with, it's not my choice, it's the buyer's choice. So I always have a conversation with the buyer saying, how would you like to go about this? And through that conversation with this specific house and specific buyer, that's kind of the way we decided to pursue this. The other thing, and just throwing it out there, because this is also things that you want to keep in your mind and in your Rolodex, when you're dealing with something like that, I don't know about y'all, but lately these attorneys are going like full head charging people with title work. Like, I've had a contract go in, 5 days later, halfway through due diligence, it blows up, and my buyers are getting billed for like $800 worth of title work. So with this one, knowing that that's happening more and more, and these attorneys are done eating title work, I had to tell the attorney's office when I submitted the contract, wait until we're finished with doing our inspections to see if we're going to go move forward before we order the appraisal. That was with the lender, and run title work. So I had to manage all this, which is also why this was such a real exhausting situation with this deal, is because I needed to get these inspections done because we were holding on title work and appraisal, and I didn't want that to come back and bite us later on in the day. So, did I answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. Also through this talks about the buyer's right to re-inspect. And we're going to go hit that in a second, but I just wanted to touch on the time frames. And again, This class is very specific to the CCRA contract. The state contract would need a whole nother due diligence class. A lot of it's similar, but this is going to be specific to state. So with this, come on in if you want to come in, or not. Just peek. Hello? I'm very, very sneaky. You want to come in? Come on in. He's like, I'm embarrassed, I'm going to run. So in the CCRA contract, it gives us how many business days to do our due diligence? 10 business days. Come on in. There's food if you want to help yourself in the kitchen.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, you can help yourself. And yep. So we have 10 business days. But this is due diligence. So this is not only for inspections. What else would we be doing during due diligence?
HOAs, so that's important. Surveys, if that's important.
Right. We're here to verify any and all information the seller and seller's agent has given us. It's not just about inspections, because if it was, we don't need 10 days. But we do need 10 business days to verify, especially with HOA, because I'll tell you what, I don't know about you, but I just went through one that took them like 9 days to just get back with me. And then they get back with me, not to go on a tangent. They get back with me and they go, yeah, we just took over the account in January, so I really don't know what this covers. And
you're just confirming yearly costs, what they're covering.
I want a budget. I want the current budget of this year. I want last year's budget. My biggest I also want to know what they're covering. What is the HOA responsibility? What is the homeowner's responsibility? I also want to see what type of reserves they have. Why would that be important?
Condos, especially.
Big time.
I've never dealt with any HOAs yet, so what do you expect from them to give you for you're satisfied? Like, do you expect like something in writing, email?
They give you a $275 bill.
Is it only $275 or it's $400? What I ask for is the current budget and last year's budget, because I want to cross-reference to see, A, is that HOA management company budgeting correctly? And what I'm trying to avoid or prevent is my buyer walking into buying a property that has a horrible management company that I know that buyer is going to eventually get assessed. And at least they need to know that that's a possibility. I mean, it's always a possibility. You never know what type of anything can come up. However, if you know, for example, that you're going into a patio home community where they still own the little bit of the backyard, but the roof and the paint and the mailboxes and the landscaping are all covered by the management company and HOA. Well, what if you only have $5,000 in your reserve account, but now you have 300 units that are going to need roof replacements? What does that tell you? That tells you that it's almost a 100% possibility that someone's going to get assessed here soon if they need a roof replacement. So you kind of just want to explain that correctly. And that's what you're looking for. And again, we don't make decisions for the buyer. We just give them the information to let them make that decision for them.
Another big thing is like the installment fees and the transfer fees. Like, we don't want a Christmas tree, and if I wasn't reading, whatever part of that, it was like $1,500 extra they were gonna have to pay at closing.
Oh yeah.
So sometimes that's huge, and buyers don't expect that. They don't expect that you get the closing every year. Like,
Especially $1,500 or cobblestone.
it was actually
Cobblestone.
5,000. It is still $5,000.
Yeah.
So so when you bought, and I don't really know, like in the last 6 months, but they were taking a one-time assessment of $5,000 as an estoppel fee to help with the reserves to cover the clubhouse and the pool and everything else. It's a lot of money. And then if there's also something. He could have. Rob Haney could have changed it. That was just when I was there. It was still a $5,000 fee.
But the resales.
Okay.
Yeah, resales.
A new one or so?
And they charge $5,000. I got it in writing that they reduced that on resales because the community was having a stroke. because it was impacting their ability to sell.
Yeah, I believe that 100%.
Well, all I know is that when I was selling in Cobblestone, there actually was a $10,000 fee in the new homes, like $5,000 to the clubhouse and then $5,000 for the amenities, because they had to rebuild the clubhouse, so they were trying to get their money back. And then when you bought the new home, the builder was absorbing that cost out of the sale. So what they did, they raised the prices and they paid themselves back. But you have to be careful. And these estoppel fees are getting ridiculous. I'm just on my personal opinion. And I mean, Gary and I go back and forth on this. My personal opinion is the people that are owners in the HOA should speak up, because y'all are paying for the management company to do their job. But yet the management company is now charging a buyer anywhere from $200 to $500 or $5,000 at sometimes for an estoppel fee. Like, that's part of your management fee.
Or they don't care. Having lived in North Carolina since 2006 and watching it go through Southern Community Services to CAMS, it's only gotten worse.
CAMS is,
yeah. And they don't care. They don't. And
they will care though if the homeowners come together and start pushing back on it. But unless the homeowners start pushing back.
I see it. I don't know how much goes to CAMS, but it's a common bitch session.
Oh yeah, I know. But I think it's really important for us as agents, especially representing our buyers during this due diligence process, and maybe even a listing agent, to be mindful of estoppel fees. Because the last thing you want to happen is, even if you're a listing agent, you go to that closing table and there's a $500 estoppel fee and your buyer is barely scraping by with 100% USDA rural financing to get to the closing table. Someone's going to have to figure that out at closing. And that's just because there wasn't much communication. And so I think that's I'm glad you brought that up, because I think HOA is 100% part of our responsibility during this due diligence period.
Real quick, Carmen wasn't sure what a special assessment is.
So there's two types of assessments. You have an HOA assessment that just are rules that run with the land. So let's say, for example, Chestnut Hill Plantation. They have a $450 annual assessment that runs with the land. That's to help every single home is going to be hit with $450 a year to cover amenities and upkeep, landscaping, and HOA management. Okay? That would be disclosed in the listing and in the contract prior to the buyer agreeing to the contract. In the listing.
Yeah, if you were listing.
If you were listing, you would need to, you ask the owner, hey, is this part of an HOA? Or if you're doing your job and you're pulling the deed, you would see that there are deed restrictions, and then you'd go dig a little bit deeper to find out the management company if the owners didn't know. But the owners should know, because they're paying the bill every year. And if not, there would be a lien on their property. Okay?
It's really fun if it's a voluntary HOA.
That's interesting in itself.
And Carmen, let's say they have $10,000 in their reserves, but you have a buyer. This is way important if that could happen. They have $10,000 in their reserves, and then all of a sudden, 6 months after your buyer bought the condo, all of, like Lori said, 10 roofs need to be replaced. If that costs $25,000, the HOA has 10 that they'll send to it, but then you do a special assessment to everybody that lives there, whether they like it or not, to pay for it.
Because there's a short in the reserve, which is why it's so important to make sure that there's a nice cushion in the reserve to know, like, I just did a closing and there was only like $5,000 in the reserve, but every single unit all had the roofs replaced and the property was just painted.
Can I make just one suggestion though? Because I'm all about CYA. If you don't know, if you're not as experienced as Lori, I would strongly encourage you to hand that over to a real estate attorney of your choice and have them to review it. I would not be taking that personal liability on advising anybody about reserve funds.
Yeah, that's a great point. Thank you for that.
Ask them, when you're talking to the HOA, ask them, have there been any recent special there been any assessments, special assessments in the last 10 years? If they say, yeah, we did this or that in 2022, then you can show that to your buyer. They have to make the decision, and everybody's idea and definition of that's okay, I work with it is different. But that's a good thing sometimes to tell your buyers, because they may be worried that this, and this will need to be done, and that's a lot of money. Well, they just did.
And the other good news is that estoppel letter would have a lot of like assessments or any other disclosures in there too, because the lender would be like, meh, because if there's an assessment outstanding, the lender's not going 99% of the time not going to let that loan go through until that's managed if that was not disclosed, because that adds to everything. All right, let's go back to definitions. Why is definitions of this contract important when it comes to our due diligence? Maybe it helps define timelines, right? So the definition of the CCRA contract, a single business day, and all of the contract with the CCRA is going to be timelines based upon business days. So a single business day is considered a 24-hour period starting at 8 a.m. and ending at 7:59 a.m. So if we go down to the last page, we know that this box right here is going to be accepted by the receiving agent after the last initial and date is placed. That doesn't mean that the contract is not valid. So if this is missing, the contract's still valid. But what this does is this actually makes deadlines and timelines extremely transparent. And if you send this to compliance without this, it's going to get kicked back, because our office policy says you must do this, because this is part of following directions and using the contract correctly. But it also helps define the timeline, so we don't really have a timeline issue. Because if we have this, let's say this is signed at 5 p.m. on May 1st. Let's look at our calendar. What day? Yeah, we're not talking to you since I still get text on that one. So May 1st falls on a Monday. So we're good. Is it May 1st a holiday?
The next Monday is, isn't it?
Nope, it's not a national holiday. So when would the timeline of this contract actually start? When is the first business day to start counting due diligence? Tuesday morning, May 2nd at 8 a.m. There you go. That's important, because it's our job and our responsibility to make sure that we are completely within our timelines of our due diligence section of the contract. Okay? We talked about licensed contractor in 13. Let's go down and I'm not trying to like beat this, but I do think that this is a vital part of understanding, because we need to make sure that we are explaining this correctly and effectively to our clients. If you're going down into this contract, you have 10 business days. Let's say, using our example, we're starting at May 2nd at 8 a.m. Brittany, you can help with this one. When does our due diligence period expire?
16th.
7:59 a.m. or whatever that number is.
Monday?
Okay, so let's look and make sure we don't have any national holidays. I have weird things on my calendar, so don't make fun of me. I don't see national holidays. I see Cinco de Mayo, but I don't think that's a national. It might be a national holiday to me in my mind, but it's not a real national holiday. So we start here, 8 a.m. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So 7:59 a.m. when?
16th.
On the 16th. So what do? I always make sure, once we go under contract, that my buyer or my seller knows that at 7:59 a.m. on the 16th, we're done. So what does that mean? If we are under due diligence, regular, normal due diligence, with right to have due diligence. We have to have a repair addendum in prior to 7:59 a.m. on the 16th. The contract also says specifically that if we do that, we need to inspect all the reports that are done. Even if we don't do a repair addendum and we do a termination, which we can also ask to be terminated and send a release, we still need to send all the inspections. It's not if, hey, do you want them? It's you have to, and that's what the contract says, okay? So I want you to be mindful of that. Please make it a practice in your business not to wait until 7 a.m. on the 16th. My eye just twitched. It cuts it too close. Do you think that there's going to be an emergency with you or the buyer at any given point on that last minute? Do you think that it matters to the contract if there's an emergency? It does not. What matters is that you waited for the last minute, and now you could put that buyer in a position of having to purchase the property as is. I don't know if you want to do that, but I definitely don't want to do that. So this first part says you have 10 business days to do any inspections or verify any information, and then it lists all the things and not limited to, which we're going to touch on in a few minutes. It also says you are allowed to extend. That's another option. So let's say that you have a home inspection that comes back and says, you know, we see some serious movement. We recommend that the buyer goes ahead and gets a structural engineer out to just take a look and see what's going on. Let's say you reach out to the structural engineer you do business with and they're 2 weeks out. Well, at that time, you may want to go ahead and say, hey, seller, we need another XYZ many business days. I don't know about y'all. I'm pretty much a stickler that if the contract timelines are going to be used within business days, I strongly recommend you sticking to business days. I wouldn't say a week. I wouldn't say 24 hours. I would say 1 business day, 3 business days, 5 business days. If not, then you might have a conflict if you didn't write it correctly, and a lot of people don't write things correctly. So just stay consistent within the frame of the contract, okay? So understand you can do, again, please don't wait till 7:59 a.m. Now, there are situations where I have waited to 7:50 a.m., but that was more out of a strategy, saying that's fine. If you don't sign this addendum, you do have to be strategic at times. Let's say you sent out an addendum asking to extend it for business days, okay? And you sent that out, what do we say? You sent that out at 8 a.m. on the 15th. Well, now you don't hear from anything. You ask, please confirm receipt. They confirm receipt, but they're not answering. Midnight goes, now you're in the 16th. You get up at 6:30, you look, nothing. You send out an email going, we're cutting it close. But you already have to prep that buyer going, hey, are you in the position of wanting to buy this house as is if they don't extend it? You can go ahead and piggyback that with a release. And you could send that release. I wouldn't wait for 7:59. I'd send it at 7:50 a.m. and say, well, if they're not going to do this and we're asking to be released, please confirm receipt. Option A. Option B is you can also have a piggyback repair addendum done saying that the seller will hire a structural engineer and verify XYZ or whatever. You can do that too and kick that out within that time frame. There's many different ways to navigate this, but you got to just be careful because your time could be on your side, but it also may not be on your side, and you've got to be mindful of that time. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. So we talked about a little bit, what can we do during this procedure? We can accept the property as is. We can terminate, and here's the thing, buyer in their sole discretion. What does that mean?
If they get a win in the middle of the night, they can do
I changed my mind. Changed my mind. So buyer in their sole discretion, they can terminate. Okay? That's what that means, listing agents. Now, is there a way that you can negotiate the contract that might help prevent our sellers from being damaged during this time? Maybe. If a heavy seller's market again, you can always say that buyers have 5 business days to be able to terminate within their sole discretion. You can also put a penalty fee for terminating. But you want to feel it out. It depends on the property and it depends on the time you're selling real estate, because you don't want to do that in a buyer's market because you'll never sell that house. Okay? All right. So the other, and if you terminate, you also have to make sure you send that release prior to 7:59 a.m. And using this example on the 16th, why does this keep happening? It's annoying.
And if they don't reply in time, like, well, I never confirmed that matter. As long as you can show in writing when you sent it, they will notify on the block 30 minutes. Right, Lord?
Yes.
So, Lori, if they terminate because of just sole discretion, does that mean that they are permitted, that the seller can give them their earnest money back, or that's a whole other conversation?
Seller has to give it
They
back
have to
unless
give
you
it back?
negotiated something different.
Yep.
Or it's a termination.
Sorry, I'm trying to figure out why our display just went completely blank. You gotta love technology.
Basically, in that 14 days around, with my sellers is, the first 10 business days for any or no reason, they can change their mind and walk
So
away.
they could have found another house.
They could not have that
The name
happen.
of the,
I've had that happen on day,
whatever,
Anything.
dates, but it is bilateral, so they
Yes,
have,
and your agents.
So they
the
have
seller
to
has to sign a release,
Yeah.
so sometimes you get a bud, and
give, so they have to give.
Yes, it's in the contract, unless you've negotiated a penalty.
Yep,
Which
that
you
is
can
absolutely
find
correct.
Has the penalty already in there, the CCRA contract. So
What would make you use one or the other, or just?
you're supposed to use the CCRA
You're supposed to
contract
use the
according to your broker in charge.
Yeah, if you're working in the Midlands area
Most people use.
and you're a member of the CCRA, you really want to use the CCRA contract. Actually, if you ask around, including attorneys, they're also going to tell you that the CCRA contract is the better of the contracts to use. At the end of the day, that's right. At the end of the day, though, you got to present all offers. So if you're not familiar with the state contract, you still need to present all offers, and you and your seller can actually counter on a CCRA contract. You literally can rewrite the whole thing, have the seller sign everything based upon what the buyer said, and send it over and for the buyers to sign again.
But if your seller, I'm just gonna kind of be the devil's advocate in that, if your seller is kosher with everything in that state contract and they're not making a counter, I wouldn't dare change the paperwork. I would just suck it up, buttercup, and move through the state contract.
And you could do that too.
I get that on.
That's fine. Yeah, and you just, if you're not sure what to do, just call me and you can navigate through everything. Okay, so the third one is to request for remedy, which means you can go ahead and make a request for remedy. Do we have to just ask for repairs here?
Please don't ask for the carpet to be clean.
And that's a great point. So when we're having inspections done, let me ask you guys this. What are we looking for?
Material defects.
Latent defects, things that we can't see. The things that we can see, our offer should be based upon that. So if we see the carpet ripped up and we see like dings all over the walls and we see the places dirty because people are dirty, I mean, those are the things that we're going to base. Screens are ripped. there's a hole in the glass. I mean, these are things that we can see. So our initial offer is going to be based upon these things. So when you negotiate that, you're going to say, hey, listen, I know we didn't come in full price, but let me tell you why.
And that's a good buyer's agent, is explaining that to the buyer before they even get out and start looking.
That's setting great expectations. An educated buyer is the best buyer. So if you set those expectations up in front before you take them out on the road, you're going to have a lot less problems during this negotiation period when you're dealing with your diligence.
And if the buyers don't have the money in their pocket to buy it, do it afterwards, then put it in other contingencies or other terms, whatever it needs to be.
Yep. And that's why this says request for remedy, because it's not just, and we're going to, I'm going to just touch on that now because I have a whole list, but since it's just us and it's intimate. So it's not just about asking for repairs. And there's different ways of navigating around asking for repairs, you guys. There's asking for repairs. We can do that. But what else can we do? We can say, well, if we get the repairs priced out, you can use a third-party contractor. You can go ahead and use Porch. I don't know if you guys use that. I've used that a lot. And within 48 hours, it spits out a breakdown of how much everything's going to cost. And I can use that to negotiate not only for my buyers, but I use it for my sellers too. So once I get a repair request back and the reports, I upload that report to Porch. And I'll get an itemized list of how much it would cost in general to get that fixed here in Columbia. And then I'll use that to negotiate for my sellers once they kick it back over. Everything's a negotiation. You can negotiate saying, all right, well, instead of doing the repairs, why don't you take XYZ amount and put it towards closing costs? You can say, hey, instead of you doing, because think about this, if you are a seller and somebody hands you a list of repairs you're going to do and you price it out, are you going to go with the highest quote or the lowest quote? If you're a seller, you're going to go through the lowest quote. You're going to get it done as cheap as possible. But if you're a buyer's agent and you're representing a buyer, how does that feel good knowing that that's going to happen for your buyer? Would you rather get the money and see if the buyer can hire a contractor of their choice and get it done the way they want to get it done?
And the seller would rather do that as well.
Seller doesn't want to be bothered messing around with things. They're trying to pack and move. They got enough. And I'm telling you, moving is the #1 stressful trigger. Like, it's out of top 5. It's like up there. It's big time. So you can negotiate closing costs, and that'll free up some money for that buyer to go ahead and be able to get their work done at closing. You can also have money allocated to a third-party contractor. But I'm telling you, if you do that, you better have a conversation with that lender well before you negotiate that out, because some loans will not allow that. And especially if you're doing VA or FHA and you have that appraisal inspection, you're creating a red flag for the underwriter saying, hey, $3,000 to Carnes HVAC. Well, what do you think that underwriter is going to do when they see that coming across their desk? Oh, well, there's a big red flag with the HVAC. We need this fixed prior to letting this close. It's a condition now of closing. So you got to be real careful with the loans and the conversations that you have before you make a decision on how you're going to navigate through this. I just had an FHA buyer. I knew that there were some things that I was worried about when that appraiser inspector was going to come through, which is outside of due diligence, y'all. Your 10 business days can come and gone, and that appraiser inspector is going to come out there and do what they need to do. They may appraise it, but they may also list conditions that need to be fixed prior to closing. The appraisal contingency in the contract does not talk about fixing things. It talks about price. So you got to be super careful there, because that could be a big problem.
So Lori, let me ask you, how did you handle that? Because I actually had an agent write in to the contract that if the VA appraiser turned up anything that the seller was going to agree to it, on the fix it. On the front end, I'm like, hell no, I'm not advising my seller to sign that.
It's signing a blank check.
Exactly.
Yeah, I wouldn't sign a blank check either. I think that there's ways of navigating around that. Here's the thing. I would come back and say, listen, buyer, you have 10 business days to do your due diligence. We're going to get inspections back, and within those inspections, when we get them back, we'll know what's going to get hit or not. If you have wood rot all around the jambs of your doors, you're most likely going to get smacked with the appraiser inspection and making that a condition.
Right.
We know, we've done this long enough to know. So I would say, you know what? Do your home inspections, go with your due diligence, and come back and let's see what we think needs to be repaired. We're going to prevent that appraiser from making it a condition.
The biggest thing typically is going to be a roof. If the inspectors say, you know.
Yeah, and we know, I mean, if the roof is 21 years old and it looks like there's been patches all over it, they're going to smack it. So as a buyer's agent, you know, you'd want to go in and make your offer. Be like, here, listen, I'm offering you this because we need to get a new roof. Or we might need to get a new roof before we close. But the other thing I feel is vital is that we as buyer agents, we need to make sure we understand what we're showing our buyers based upon the loans that they have. If it's a VA loan and you're showing a house from 1920 that needs to be completely renovated, don't.
Well, there is, because I just had a buyer, and I don't work with buyers, but Erica's I could tell by just looking at pictures on the MLS, she was going FHA, and that's the only way this is going to get past FHA is if you do one of the FHA rehab loans.
Correct. You could do a rehab loan. There's very minimal people that know about that.
So I said, but if you're just going to do the standard FHA, I said, never.
Right. And there are loans like that. You can definitely do a rehab loan, and there are lenders that if you need information on that, I can get you, but not many of them know about it.
Prime lending is excellent.
I was just going to say Erica knows about that, so she can definitely do that and help out. But yeah, just be the expert that you are. And guide the buyers correctly, manage your buyers correctly so your buyers understand. I had an FHA buyer that I was helping out with recently, and she kept pulling up HUD homes, like literally HUD homes, and sending me things left and right. And I said, I know our price point is tight. I know there's nothing on the market for under 130 in Irmo. That's not a HUD home. I said, but you can't go FHA with these houses. These houses are as is. They're not going to be doing anything. We tried to go the FHA rehab loan, and she just wanted to use this specific lender who had no idea what that loan was. And so I was like, all right, so we're backed into a corner. I said, let's try to find you something else, which we did, but you have to you have to work with people to get them there. Okay, so let's say we got through the 10 business days and we sent over a repair request. Per this contract, at that time, buyer and seller have 5 business days of a negotiation period. Okay, so let's go back to our timeline. Based upon our example, where were we? 7:59 a.m. on the 16th. So now, 8 a.m. on the 16th is your first day of that 5 business day. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that leaves you with 7:59 a.m. on the 23rd is when that 5 business day expires. Okay?
Even if you get your repair in demand before.
You're getting, yeah, so that's a good point. So let's say, and we've had this come up many times, let's say you put your repair addendum in on the 8th business day into your 10-day due diligence. Well, good for you. There's still 10 days. That doesn't start that 5 business day. That 5 business days still starts at 8 a.m. on the 16th.
So I'm going to piggyback on this, and then I got to run. But for you all, if you do turn it in early, and the listing agent responds, say, 3 days after you turn it over as a listing agent, I always put in that addendum that by buyer's acceptance of this, it includes all due diligence as referenced on page 2 of
Yeah,
paragraph whatever.
13, la 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 la.
So
You end it.
you
So you can't end it unless you end it. And that I was gonna, yeah, that's where I was gonna go next, but I'm glad you brought that up because that's exactly, you have to end it. If you don't have to end, if you don't end it, it does, those time frames still go the way it goes.
Even though you've given that to me on day 8, you could come back on day 10 and hand me something else.
Correct.
After we've already negotiated.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Exactly.
And they're still within their right to do that unless you, and unless you negotiate, that's gonna, you've concluded that paragraph.
And I also put in there, like I just did one, we just did a cash reduction.
Yeah.
In lieu of, and by the way, if you have a loan, do not ever write in lieu of repairs on an addendum because the underwriter's going to see that and start questioning.
Yep. What type of repairs need to be done? Well, send me a copy of all the inspections.
So Lori can guide you on how to get around that, but this was a cash deal, so we just wrote in lieu of seller making a repair.
Yep.
Buyer and seller agree to reduce sales price by blah. But then I wrote in there by buyer accepting this addendum. This concludes the due diligence phase of the contract.
Yep.
Reference page blah, paragraph blah.
Yep.
And seller requests a reply by. And I gave them 24 hours
I
to
need you to
accept.
call you, you dictate that to me.
But because they have that time window.
Right.
If you're the seller, you don't want somebody dragging their feet out.
You want to knock it on and keep the contract going.
That's exactly right.
Absolutely. I love that. Thank you for bringing that up because that was where I was going next.
Sorry.
Thank you for coming. Good to see you.
All right.
Perfect.
Yes, please do.
That's awesome.
I would love for him to go. Then I can drag him to pink.
Yeah.
Did you say pink?
I got tickets.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
Not with Drew.
You should make him go and video it for us. Okay, so coming up to the end of 5 business days, you can extend the negotiating period still if you have not come to terms with that. If you choose not to extend that negotiating period, now it goes into 2 business days. This is your last shot to make this work. The buyer, now it doesn't say, on the 5 business days, it says buyer and seller have not reached an agreement, but the buyer and seller are the ones that are going to make an agreement together. If you're not making an agreement by the end of that 5 business day, which was 7:59 a.m. on the 23rd, bye Renee, that we talked about on the contract, now the buyer has 2 business days. Either you're going to go ahead and extend again, or accept the property as is in its current state with no repairs or replacements made by seller, providing written notice to seller or seller's broker. If it's not extended and you're not accepting it as is, then when that is over, either party can terminate. And this gives that seller, so the seller's not held hostage. I mean, think about how many business days. We are now into 17 business days. So at the end of the 17th business day, if that seller has not taken the property as is or extended it, so we're now 8 a.m., 1, 2, so 7:59 a.m. on the 25th. If I'm a listing agent and we have not knocked this out, I'm sending a release. We're done. And I'm putting the house right back on the market. Have a nice day. Well, we didn't want to sign a release. Too bad. You're out of your time frame. Seller has a right. But listen, and I get this a lot, you guys. Before this time frame, I've had a lot of agents come to me saying, the seller sent a release. I'm like, why? There's nothing in the contract that allows the seller to get out. There's nothing in here that says seller can get out. Buyer and seller can agree that they're not moving forward together, but if seller's not happy with the timelines and they just want to put their house back on the market, unless this works itself through those time frames, seller can't just terminate the contract. They're not within their right. Okay? So be mindful. Set those expectations with your sellers when you're going over this contract with them. It's vital to let them know, hey, listen, this is where you're at. Now, if I'm listing a house that's really been renovated, that's gorgeous for $150,000, and I know I'm going to get 29,000 contracts within the first 24 hours, I might say to them, meh, let's just go as is. We can go due diligence, well, as is with right to due diligence. Completely different strategy here. And I'll tell you why. Do you have any questions about this up to this point?
That's the only time that seller can get out, can put back on the market and get out of the contract is if you run through that whole thing and you, as an agent, try to say, hey, we're coming up to the end. You would reach out to the
all the time. What's going on? What are we doing?
It's coming, and then if it never does, then at that moment you can advise your client, look,
We're done.
we're done. Yeah.
Let's send them a release. Okay? But that's a long time. It's a long time to play games with somebody, especially in a hot market.
17 business.
It's half a month that you're holding on to a property.
Right to them.
And I'm telling you right now, a seller is going to get livid if they do this and then have to put it on the market again and go through the same thing. Livid. So you got to set the right expectations. So let's look at this real fast. FHA and VA appraisal inspections. Remember we mentioned that? So the property may be inspected by an appraiser appointed by the lender. The inspections is not subject to the time limitations and other requirements of due diligence outlined above. If the appraiser identifies repairs to be made as a condition of loan approval and the seller selects not to make them, the buyer will have the option of paying for and completing the repairs prior to closing or voiding the contract with earnest money being released to the buyer. Why? Because it's a condition of the loan. And if the buyer can't get financing because the seller's not willing to work with them to get the condition, they can't get financing if we don't get it fixed. And I'll tell you what, if I'm representing a buyer, there's a whole day and you know what, where I'm going to say, oh yeah, drop 20 grand and fix this for this seller. So maybe the seller won't close and you're out 20 grand. Right? So, how do we navigate this for our sellers a little bit better in a seller's market? Well, we do B, sold as is with right to terminate. The biggest takeaway I'm going to do here is it's very similar to the first provision paragraph where it's with due diligence, right? 10 business days to verify anything you need to do and do all your inspections. Here's the kicker. At the end of this, either you're going to decide if you want the property or not. If you don't say anything to me, let's go back to our calendar. Let's say we're using the same time frames, and I hope this calendar helps you understand how I work through this. So we were at May 2nd, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So 7:59 a.m. on the 16th. If I have not heard from that buyer, at 8 a.m., that buyer is buying that property as is. Or not. If the buyer comes back to me with a repair request on the 15th and shoots me, and please, buyer's agents, I want you to listen to this very carefully. If the buyer sends me a repair request on the 15th and I do not respond, by 8 a.m. on the 16th, that buyer is still buying the property as is. There's no 5 business day, let's negotiate this out. It's a completely different paragraph. It's as is with due diligence. You can send me any type of addendum you want. I don't have to respond. It's as is. But I want you to remember this, buyer's agents. Just because you sent me an addendum, there's nothing in this provision here that talks about any type of remedy. So if you send an addendum out and then that agent calls you the next day on the 16th at 10 a.m. going, so let me know when your appraiser, they get scheduled or something like that. And you're like, what? Well, why didn't you respond? Well, my buyer's not going to move forward if you don't respond. And I, as a listing agent, would be like, oh, too bad. Then there'll be a breach of contract. You better have them check with an attorney. Well, we sent you an addendum with a request to remedy. And I'm like, well, thanks. But there was nothing in the contract that gave you the ability to negotiate. Either you were going to send me a termination, and if I didn't hear from you, you're accepting the property as is. So thanks for the addendum. We're not replying to the addendum. You didn't send a termination letter. You didn't hold me hostage. Your buyer's still buying it as is. Agent, you failed because you didn't communicate correctly, and hopefully your commission will cover the repairs that they want.
So, without the right to terminate.
Did you get it?
No, I got lost on the last one.
Okay. So, we're as is with right to terminate. You're the buyer's agent. Your 10 days is up at 7:59 a.m. on the 16th. Okay? On the 15th, as is with right to terminate, instead of terminating, you send me a repair request. Okay? I reply, received. Okay? Now it's 10 a.m. on the 16th. Your due diligence expired at 7:59 a.m. on the 16th. At 10 a.m., you say, hey, are the sellers going to be doing any repairs? Are you going to reply or counter? And I'm going to say no. It's 10 a.m. on the 16th. Your buyer is purchasing this house as is per contract. And you come to me saying, but no, we sent you a repair addendum within the time frame. And I'm going to respond saying, well, that was your bad because the contract didn't give you the power to negotiate. You can negotiate all you want, but if you didn't hear back from us before that 10-day expiration at 7:59 a.m. and you didn't send me the release, sorry, I have ADD and like swirl. If you didn't send me the release before 7:59 a.m., you're taking the property as is. Okay, that's the mistake that a lot of buyers agents make. They go as is with right to due diligence and think that they're going to be sneaky and negotiate with the seller and hold the seller hostage. But there's nothing in those terms that are going to give you the right to send me something so we don't have 5 business days. As is with right to due diligence doesn't give you 5 business days. All it says is that the buyer can proceed with the terms of the contract or void the contract before it expires. You can send an addendum. You can do whatever you want. But it's not going to change this. Failure to provide notice of voiding this contract prior to the expiration of the due diligence period will be deemed buyer accepting the property as is with no seller repairs or replacements. Your only choices are to void it or to move forward. And if you send me a repair addendum or, hey, you can even send me an addendum saying, you know what, I got all this back. It's going to cost me an additional $5,000. We feel like we overpaid. So buyer and seller agreed to reduce the purchase price $5,000. The new purchase price is XYZ. Send it 3 business days before and put an expiration. Seller will respond to this in 1 business day, or say this will be null and void by this time frame. I'm just going to tell you guys, if you do not get a response of that negotiation before 7:59 a.m., You must have a conversation with your buyers ahead of time, and you must send a release if the buyer is not going to move forward before this expires with as is with right to terminate. It will not go into a 5 business day negotiating period. Does that make sense? Y'all with me on this one?
Is that worded differently than it used to be? Because it didn't look like that before, did it?
This is always, it used to be, as is with due diligence, as is with right to terminate. It was always the same.
Okay, so why would somebody check as is without right to terminate? Why would anybody use that one as an option?
Because if you're competing against 17 other people to buy a house and the property's as is, you're never going to get a house. Woo.
What if you're an investor and you're gonna rip it apart anyway?
Okay, you're just saying, they look, the contractor looked at it themselves and they're like, that's fine, I'm good.
I still have 10 business days. There's many times in order for me, in a market where it's a seller's market, and I know I'm going up, even now, you guys, I'm going up against 25 to 30 other people trying to find a house in this area for under $200,000. I'm still going to have to be competitive. How are you competitive? Yeah, you can do an escalation clause and you can do a gap clause, but I'm telling you right now, as a listing agent, I'm going to be separating all of my escalations and gap clauses by financing type and as is. And if you are in the due diligence, you're getting pushed over here. And if you're as is, you're going to get top priority because you have a better offer. It's a better offer. I don't have to mess around with negotiating and waiting 17 days.
If you sign without right to terminate, then.
I'm not talking about without right to terminate right now.
That's what
I haven't hit that yet.
Okay, 'cause that's a whole.
I haven't hit that yet. Okay? So we're not there yet. We're still on B. Everybody with me on B, right? Y'all with me on B? Okay, let's go to C.
Because I've had people do that, Carmen. I've had 2 or 3 big agents, one of them small, a couple of them big, and I'm like, you know better. So you gotta be careful, because they'll flip that, thinking there's that, and then they'll go, you're representing a buyer, okay, well, we're gonna do it as is with the right to terminate. How about that? Our offer's great. It is, it's better at that moment. But then if something, when you get there and they have their inspections done, they can still ask that you do them, but they're not supposed to, and your seller doesn't have to, or negotiate. Right, Lori?
Yep. So let's talk. You just got to make sure that if you're negotiating you can send an addendum anytime you want, but that's not going to change the timeline set in stone in the contract. Okay, that makes sense. Send an addendum out, but don't let it go past these timelines, you guys, because a lot of agents go, well, I think I sent an addendum. And I'm like, so you think that changes the timeline? It doesn't. Okay? Unless buyer and seller both have it in writing that they extended the due diligence period to change the timeline. That will change it. C, as is without right to terminate. Okay, well, you're allowed to do your inspections. Seller's not going to make any repairs or replacements. Buyer's right to do inspections, but you can't get out. It is office policy. Please understand, it is office policy. If your buyer wants to go see, I need something in writing in the file that says from you to the buyer, my broker in charge, my brokerage company, and I strongly advise you not to go as is without right to terminate. You are choosing to move forward anyway and understand all the risks involved by choosing to go as is without right to terminate. And I need them to respond, I understand, and I'm moving forward anyway. So when they do sue us, not if, when they do sue us, we're going to give that to our attorney and say, we strongly advise them not to. They put in writing that they understood that they had a right to speak with an attorney, they understood all the risks, and they still chose to do it anyway. And we, out of our fiduciary duty of obedience, were required to present their offer. Okay? CYA with that one. This one, reach out to me. If somebody says this, don't ever say, oh, that's a good idea, I'll do that here. Don't ever. But if somebody's pushing you to do that, reach out to me so we can make sure we navigate this together to protect us so we are not going to get sued. Or if we do, we protect each other. Okay? That one scares me. I lose my mind. I literally have gotten in a fight with agents like going, I'll fire you. Because that's how much that scares me. Now, if they're going to buy a house, there are times, like real property is real property, right? You have land and your improvements. We learned that in real estate school. Even if we have a dilapidated house that's halfway falling down, that's still considered an improvement. And you would still use a regular contract of sale, not a land sale, because there is still property on there. That, I don't mind if you go property sold as is with right to terminate, if your buyer's intent is to knock that thing down and rebuild. Then I don't care. We don't care. We really don't care. Because it's as is. We're going to knock it down. We know it's a tear down. That's a different story. That's what you use this for. But we don't ever use this for a first-time buyer going FHA or VA. Please don't. And if we do, we go to our broker in charge and say, okay, let's talk about how this looks. Okay?
So if I'm jumping the gun, tell me. But please to go.
Yeah.
The part about if you don't pick one.
Yeah. So if you look up here on this new contract, it's in bold and capital. Select one of the following options. Please make sure the buyer initials one of the options and selects it, because if not, it automatically goes to C.
So if you miss that,
and we're in trouble.
Your buyer is going to cut your head off.
Oh, yeah. That's that time where you make a mistake in life where everything starts going like numb and your head's like wah 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 wah, and all the blood starts draining out of your body, and you start seeing things like not clearly, and you want to hold on to something because you're pass out. That's one of those times. So yeah, they have to sign. And you know what? Listen, just go up. Do you know that I've been doing this for so long? Like, this is my whole career, and I don't care if it's my builder's contract or this. I eat, sleep, and breathe contracts. I look at them every day. That's what I do. I still look at my contract about 10 times before I send them out. It freaks me out because we're all human. And at any given point, I could forget something. And one last thing. In DocuSign, if you're using DocuSign, and I'm not sure if Dotloop does this, but I know in DocuSign, if you go through command into DocuSign and you go pull up a contract and you if you have all the details filled out, it automatically feeds all the information into the contract. It also puts initials everywhere. Everywhere. Every single thing everywhere. So you'll have all 3 of them initialed. It is our responsibility to go through that contract and remove the things that we don't need. So I'm just throwing that out there. Just make sure that you pay attention and you kind of go through that and remove it, because you don't want them to click all of it. So yeah, be careful with that. Okay, well, that was a good one. Now, let's see. What inspections can we get? So this is called an inspection disclaimer. This is also a very good friend of yours. This is going to be one of your best friends, because you want every single buyer to acknowledge and sign this. And as a real estate agent and a realtor, it is our responsibility to say, here's all the inspections you can get. And the buyer is going to look at you going, is it necessary that I get all those inspections? And my answer is yes. This is one of your largest investments. Every single thing is necessary. Is it necessary to get a survey? Yes. You're trying to make sure that there's no encroachments on your land. You're trying to verify that you're buying land that they disclosed is really the land that you're buying. Yeah, everything's yes. Don't ever say no, because the minute you say, oh no, you don't need that owner's title policy, and then they get sued, They told me I didn't need that. And then they come back to us going, you're paying for this, right? So what can we do? How many inspections are there? Well, are there some of them that are not applicable? Of course. You don't want to get a swimming pool, and sorry, I have my feet killing me. You don't want to get a swimming pool inspection if the house doesn't have a swimming pool. That's silly. They're going to show up with their stuff and be like, swim here. You know what I mean? South Carolina wood infestation report, that's a yes. It's not if, it's when you're getting those termites. There's many times that people don't have termite bonds on their house. They don't have to have a termite bond on their house. You can go ahead and have money saved in a savings account and have interest thrown on it just in case you have termites. There's many different ways you can do it. But you also want to make sure that not only the house doesn't have termites, but you want to make sure it doesn't have like wood destroying organisms, or they're not infested with something else that, I mean, there's a lot of things those people find underneath houses. Yeah, there's a lots of that can hurt the home, that can cause your buyer a lot of money. So air conditioning, HVAC, that's a big ticket item. That thing needs to be replaced. And it's not just that. There's houses that I've seen that had $15,000 of ductwork that needed to be replaced. So all of that's a big deal. Carbon monoxide and radon inspections. So we do have to recommend. Now, carbon monoxide and radon, most of the new, and let me just throw this out here. Your home inspector will come in and inspect those smoke alarms, right? All the new builds now come with a carbon monoxide smoke alarm together. I always recommend my buyers when they buy homes that aren't brand new, hey, listen, if it's not a smoke detector and carbon monoxide combo, just go replace them. Be safe. Just get them, replace them, have an electrician. An electrician can do that. Come out. You can even buy them. Just replace them and then be safe. It's better to be safe.
So you don't actually do a carbon monoxide radon inspection, or do you recommend somebody come in to see if there is radon?
You need to recommend it.
Okay.
You need to recommend, hey, do all of it. Now, if you're sitting on a slab, is there going to be radon? Most likely not, but I will tell you in the Southeast, there were a couple of houses that actually did have radon gas in it. And so radon it's a gas that comes from the ground. You're most likely going to find radon up north because they're going to dig into the ground, then pour a slab. If there's cracks in the slab, that's where the gas escapes in, okay? But you have to let them know that it's an option, and if they want it, they can get it.
Who would you, like, not specific, but like, would it be an electrician or a plumber? Who would you get?
I'm not 100% because no one's ever asked me. I can get that for you, though.
Okay, well, no, that's...
Yeah. Some of your home inspectors might do it.
And sometimes the mold mildew inspection people will also do that too.
Well, and that's another one I was going to, are you, mold mildew, that's okay. What do you do about that?
You recommend it?
Your home inspector will go ahead and cite something if they see it. So will your CL 100 inspector. And then if you need to go ahead and dig deeper, that's when you'd want to extend your due diligence and find an actual specialist or like a company that maybe even an environmental specialist to come in, DHEC maybe sometimes, to shut that thing down. Depending on the severity, you want to take things step by step. I'll start with the 3 roof inspections, HVAC, CL 100, home inspection. Roof inspections. Now, if you're out there and you see a roof all beat up and worn, then you might want to be like, let me get a roofing company out here. Just, your home inspector is going to look at it, but you might want to just get a roofing company because it's going to have to be replaced. At least get them a quote on that. Maybe you can negotiate that out saying, hey, we'll split it with you, depending on what type of property and everything else. Oh my gosh, you guys, this is a big one. Septic tanks and wells. Listen, I moved here from South Florida, concrete jungle. I sold real estate in South Florida. I mean, everything was on city utilities. I come here, and one of my first few deals I had out in the middle of the country. I'm literally 3 business days to the end of my due diligence, and one of my other agents goes, so how is the well and septic? I'm like, what? That was that time where it was like, whoa, 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 whoa. So I hustled up and I had an inspection. We had to test the water, so we had to extend the due diligence because I was like, we got to get the water test back. It's going to take a couple days. And then we had to have the septic done. It's vital. I just had a buyer last year that was buying a house for one of their kids, and that was also on public water and septic. And I said, I mean, everything with the inspections was kind of like, we'll fight. It was kind of weird. But anyways, I was like, you need to get the septic tested. These people live there 50 years. Why would I need that? You need to get it. It's vacant. You never know. It's vital. You don't know what's going on with the fields. You don't know what's going on in the tank. Well, he's like, you know what? I'm just going to take my chances. I said, please don't make me do the told you so dance. I said, I'm almost begging you. It's $425. Please do it. Nope, he did not do it. So a month later, I get a call and said, yep, you're right. And I'm like, what happened? Well, tank sunk into the ground, and like I had to redo everything, $5,000. So your $425 investment cost you $5,000 when we probably could have had that $5,000 absorbed out of the cost, the purchase price of the house to cover that. I'll fight with people until the point where I'm like, okay. And then I was like, you know what you're about to get? He's like, what? I'm like,
my mom used to say, pay me now or pay me later. If you pay me later, it's going to cost more.
The well water test. So you can call like Sharps. Sharps can also do well water tests and test the sanctity of the well to make sure that the well is intact and there's no issues with the well. I've also seen wells that have had things valves fell into the well. It cost $2,000. So not only you want to test the water on wells, you want to test the well itself to make sure that there's nothing wrong with that well, because that could be real pricey. Chimneys or firebox inspections. That's another big one. Fire hazards are a big deal in this business. I always stress to my buyer, if there's a chimney and a chase, or if there's just a gas insert that they can't get started, please let's get somebody to inspect this. I've had home inspectors miss chimney issues. I've had a fireplace inspector catch a chimney issue that was so structural in nature that it was a point where we had to walk from the deal because it would just cost too much money to fix that house. I'm telling you, it could be a big deal. So be mindful of that one.
So, Lori, a question about that. So there's a lot of houses like in Shandon and Hill, Melrose Heights, they have a lot of chimneys, a lot of fireplaces in them.
Yeah.
But they're not used, they're decorative, and they're just have candles in them where they don't use them at all, and they disclose that. So in that case, would you not, or would you still?
Well, if it's not, I mean, if it's not in use, if they're not using it and it's all sealed up, then I don't think there would be a need unless they wanted to convert it and use it. And then, yeah. If there's a gas line or if that's accessible.
Well, not the gas logs, you know, those duraflame logs. You know, they say, well, we can.
Oh, I would strongly recommend somebody getting something like Bart's Fireside or somebody out there before they do anything with fire.
They're going to do that.
And those logs are so toxic anyway.
If they say they haven't used it,
then have them get a chimney inspector out there to make sure it's sound and is usable.
you wouldn't then negotiate. Well, I guess you could ask for whatever you want, but it wouldn't be reasonable to ask them to fix anything if they say we haven't used it, so we're going to fix it. Right?
That's all. That could be any answer.
That could be any answer.
Yeah. It's going to be based upon what the buyer wants.
Yeah.
And how desirable is the house and how many other buyers are waiting for it. Everything is going to be very, there's never going to be one answer for any deal. It's always going to be, you're going to have to navigate that deal based upon that deal. And every deal is different. Nothing's going to be the same. There's going to be so many dynamics, every single one.
You're never gonna know anything.
No. Well, you will, but you know what? 28 years later, I still learn things.
I had a guy that does chimneys one time, and he did one for me down in Sumter. And I was like, they almost didn't want to do it because the house is only 5 years old, and the people that had it before had never used it. And he was like, the best reason to have it inspected. And I went, really? He went, yeah, because something could have fell in there and died. Something could be lodged in there. Some other water could have poured in there if the cap isn't working, and you're never going to check it or discover that water that's now leaking into a spot on the roof because you don't use it. He says not using it is a better reason to have one.
Yeah. Some other things are soil types, conservation testing and inspections. That's more going to be down your land. And I would rather you go through a land lot training before you even mess with land lots, because it's a completely different deal. Lots more to learn. And that also goes with your soil perk tests, which you do through DHEC. However, if you're above, actually, there's a line that goes through Columbia. If you're above it, now they're requiring you to get like an engineer, a scientist out there to drill down 4 feet to make sure that the water can percolate and not go into the well, like not go off into the rivers and stuff, which they're working on in the house to try to, there's only 7 scientists in this state that are practicing that will do that test above this line, which is going right through here. So Chapin, Newberry, Blythewood, like all of those areas, we're going to require this specific test. If you're like southeast, you're not required. You can just DHEC will do it for you. So if you need more information on that, you can reach out to me and we can navigate that together. All right, let's just touch on the process real fast. I'm going to it's over at 1:30 and we're at 1:17, so I just want to stay on time because I think it's really important. The process. So let's just say we're in regular contract. Let's see. And we're going to go ahead and write a repair addendum. So we get our inspections. This is an example of a home inspection. So they'll go break down what's going on. We're missing some screens. We have some damaged weather stripping. We got some damaged loose siding over here. Got some crack siding over here. Crack trim, lifted shingle. See, the home inspector is going to do a general inspection of the entire property. So we have some plumbing vents, boots that are split and damaged at the rear of home. That's a problem because you might want to go inside and look to see if there's any water spots, because usually when you have boots that are damaged, you're going to have water intrusion. Stress cracks. They will point out stress cracks. Now, for me and my understanding from a structural engineer, if it's less than a ½ an inch, it's not going to be a problem. It's concrete will crack. If you're starting to get over a ½ inch, you might want to call out a structural engineer to take a look to see what type of settling or shifting is happening with the slab or the concrete. So, I mean, this is just an example. Nail heads, seals, you'll see a lot of that. Seals have failed. You need to be careful with the state contract. The state contract says that they kick out window seals. So it's already in there that says that window seals are not a latent defect and the buyer will not negotiate that. So the state contract's a lot different. So we need to kind of go through that one of these days in the near future. Yeah. And then they break it down into subcategories on what they said. I like the pictures because you can kind of reference it, definitions. So that's kind of an example of what a home inspection would look like. Here's an HVAC inspection. Was it operable or wasn't? This one said something about a zone damper motor replacement for the downstairs zone and a service agreement. And then they say how much that would be. Some of them will give quotes, some of them won't. And then, let's see. Here's a copy of CO 100 letter. So it says, you know, is there any visible evidence of termites, drywood termites, old house borers, powder post beetles, any wood destroying insects? Is there visible evidence of prior subterranean termite treatment? Yes, well that's good news. Non-active wood destroying fungi, wood moisture content is less than 28%. Yes. Is it greater than 28%? No. If it was greater than 28%, you'd have a problem. That's a lot of moisture. And you'd have to do something to fix that because that can create wood destroying organisms, including damage. At the time of our inspection, were there visibly damaged wooden members, insect damage to column sills, joints? They said yes. So if you see, this is a big one because some loans will require a clear CL 100. I haven't seen much of that lately, but in the past there was a lot more of them requiring a clear letter. So with that might be a condition of the loan. Well, you're going to have to fix that. Like if I was a lender, you're going to have to fix that. That can put that house in a position of being like damaged, right? In this case, there was old trim damage from like wood rot, so they replaced the trim. So that's an example of what like the letter you would get. And then of course they're going to come back in. See, here we go, old termite damage from front door, and they fixed the jams. And you'll get pictures. And there you go. So,
Just the FI, you can come inspection 1 and levels 2.
So here's like just a breakdown of the process, y'all. You have them sign the inspection disclosures. You help the buyers schedule and decide on who they're going to schedule for inspections and what inspections they're going to get. That's our responsibility as a buyer's agent. Can we say, hey, here's an example of who I use? Absolutely, we can. So that's fine. I give them 2 or 3, and then I say, hey, why don't you just look at their website? Why don't you give them a call and ask them a couple questions? Let me know who you want to use, and then I will schedule them all. I'd like to try to schedule them all together because they work off of each other, and one person might catch something that the other one would miss. So I really like that, although there might be situations where it is as is with right to terminate. And then I might want to just do the home inspection first to see if it's even worth moving forward to the other 2. Okay? But you want to be careful. If you're going to do that for your buyer, just remember the minute you send that stuff to the attorney, they're going to start working on title. And if the buyer walks during that due diligence, they'll be charged with the title work. So you might want to send the stuff to the attorney saying, hey, we're going to wait to see if we're going to go forward, so don't run title until we tell you to. But don't forget to tell them, because then that'll be on you because you'll miss that closing date, and that's a problem too. So you got to be real on top of your game. Let's see. So we're going to do that. Here's the other thing. And listen, I am not perfect, and I will own my own mistakes. There are times that I've scheduled inspections for a vacant property and forgot to even tell the listing agent. And at the last minute, I'm like, oh no, I'm so sorry. I don't even know how this happened. And thank goodness that listing agent was fine. She's like, oh, no worries. I got you. But there are listing agents that be like, you're going to have to reschedule the whole thing. So make sure you make a note somewhere in your Rolodex that says, all right, make sure I schedule with a listing agent once I schedule everything. And if the house is occupied, you might want to have that conversation. Hey, we're looking at doing this. Will that be okay? All right. So we do our inspections, we review the inspections with the client, and we also go ahead and decide if there are any other inspections that we need. Do we need to extend due diligence? We decide what we want to negotiate. We talked about different strategies of negotiations, right? We can negotiate price. We can negotiate having repairs done by a third party. We can negotiate having the sellers do repairs. once you do that, here's the other thing. When you send addendums over, please make sure in the email that you're really specific. When you send it, on all my emails, I'll say, please respond to this email acknowledging receipt. Because you will sometimes get agents going, I don't know what you're talking about, I never got an email. They may or may not have, but they say that. And so then I follow up with a text going, please acknowledge receipt, I just sent you a repair addendum. And then I'll follow up with a call. Hey, I know I texted an email, just want to make sure that we're all on the same page. If you don't mind reaching out via text or email. And I'll annoy them enough that they'll be like, I got it. I got it writing now, so that's fine. Make sure that you send all your inspection reports part of the contract. So if you're sending any over, even if you're sending an addendum to negotiate price, you got to send those inspections. Anything, okay? And then they'll kick it back. Please make sure that every single change, strike, or addition on anything, contract, addendums, repair addendums, have initials and dates by all parties. Needs to be initial and dated. If we're missing one initial and date, that is voidable by the other party. You do not want to open yourself up to voidable. That means that another party, so let's say our buyer missed an initial and date and the listing agent didn't say anything, and then the listing agent gets an offer that's better than ours, that makes the contract voidable. So be careful. Different situations, if it's just one item on the repair addendum, then that would be that item. It wouldn't make the whole contract voidable. So it goes case by case, but just be careful on that. The other thing I want you to be careful of is please make sure that you are doing a couple of things. Please make sure, hold on, I just lost my train of thought, weird. Please make sure that if you are asking for them to do repairs, that you're giving them a deadline. And I would make sure you at least do like 5-6 business days prior to closing, because you want to give the buyer an opportunity to have the property re-inspected to make sure it was done correctly. I've caught things on re-inspections that they've just not fixed, and that I had to go back out and say, hey, you missed these two. And that would be over here. Parties agree repairs to be completed no later than blank business days, not including the closing date. Let's.
Or do you often, or do you typically recommend that they do have it re-inspected, or depends on what the...
I always recommend for re-inspection.
Oh, okay, so that should be another charge, or do they...
It's another charge. You need to just set that expectation up front.
So buyer pays for it.
Absolutely.
And can you speak, well, I'm finished, I don't want to interrupt if you still have a few more things.
I do, but go ahead.
Can you speak to the actual day of inspection? So I've seen a lot of different things, and I don't know, I'd love to know what your thoughts are, everybody. So when you show up, so the inspections are at home inspection at 10, HVAC at 11, and termite guy at 11:30.
Home inspection at 10, HVAC at 10, and termite at 10. They're all coming at 10.
But let's say they're all within that time. And the home inspection guy goes, you can just let me in, like it's vacant. You can let me in. I'm going to probably be about 3.5 hours. It's a big house. It's vacant.
You better, I hope you bring a book.
So it's expected that you're there.
You better not leave that house.
Right, that's, okay.
Yeah, if you open that house, you're opening somebody else's property and letting a stranger in without supervision.
I can't tell you the things that I have been told I can do, which I've never done before, but, and I should be the one to walk it up.
Absolutely. I'll tell you what, my head would explode off my body if I was a listing agent and I knew somebody was just letting inspectors in and not watching over what they were doing. I can't tell you how many times that I've actually locked up a house and found ovens on, eyes on the stove on, dishwasher still running, windows not locked. And that's my responsibility.
I was not well once, and I asked somebody to help me with the inspection, and person had so much experience. They opened the door, they let the inspector in, they let the buyer stay, they left. The buyer called me and said that they walked up and put the key in the key box after the inspection left and hope that was okay.
So if I was a listing agent and I had cameras on, someone's broker would, I mean, people's like.
This person has so much experience that they should know better, and I was like, and that's.
You know what, you find usually in my experience that the most experienced agents are the ones that bend the rules all the time.
So I thought to myself, that can't be right. But
Yeah, please don't do that. Like, I mean, in my office policy says that you don't leave people in other people's houses.
Right. So here's another question. What if your buyer is, work is just crazy, they're like, I can't be there.
If your buyer can't be there, that's you're doing it for them.
You would there, and then you would make sure to share all the information and make sure you have all the numbers for all the people, and that's
Yep, that's what I do. I'll stay with them, I'll get all the reports, I'll send it to the buyer, and I'll review it with the buyer. And if the buyer has any questions, we'll get the inspector on the phone to answer them for them, because I'll stay in my lane.
Just remember, anything happens in that house, inspector's fault or.
Actually, the contract said it's the buyer's is on the buyer.
And can't the contract be void?
If what?
And have, like, depending on in the time frame of something happening in the house.
No, but it would be the buyer's responsibility and financial responsibility, because they're responsible for any and all contractors, which is why you hire a licensed contractor, an insured contractor. Yeah. All right, so just a couple more things, because I don't want to keep you too much over, because I want to respect your time. We talked about how many business days. Make sure you put that there. Don't leave it blank, because you don't want to be going through a final walkthrough and not having an opportunity to re-inspect. When you ask for things, you have to be specific, you guys. So I'm going to tell you a quick story. In Rock Hill, there was an agent, went under contract with a buyer. Buyer did inspections. I think buyer put down $500 earnest money. Seller agreed to the inspections. Buyer and buyer's agent go to do the re-inspect. And then the buyer didn't like the way the seller fixed the stuff. But the seller fixed it exactly what said on the repair addendum. And the buyer was like, well, if you were going to be that, you should ask for something more specifically or different, right? Well, buyer refused to purchase the house. Deal blew up. Buyer's in breach. Seller did what the seller did. Buyer just refused because the buyer wanted what they wanted, but didn't explicitly, or the buyer's agent may not have explained the way the buyer wanted. Again, that's why it's so important, y'all, to make sure you have conversations with your buyers. Okay, look, the trim at the bottom is eaten up. Do you want them to just cut it and replace that bottom part? Do you want them to dig it out, fill it with wood? And do you want it repainted to match? How do you want them to remove the entire piece of trim? How do you envision this being done? Okay, that's the conversation you need to have about the whole thing. It might take 2 hours, but you have to have it. Go over everything. In this situation, buyer went to the broker. This was a time where the brokers were holding earnest money in their trust account. Buyer went in the office, asked the agent to return the earnest money. They couldn't, because you need a sign released by law is one of the 4 ways for a broker to release earnest money. You need a sign released by law. They don't have one. Seller was like, dude, you breached contract. I did what you asked me to do. I fixed everything. You just don't like the way I fixed it. That's not my problem. You chose not to purchase the house. I'm keeping your earnest money. We're only talking about $500. Buyer was pissed. Buyer left. Buyer came back at the end of the day, asked the broker again. The broker's like, dude, I wish I could give you the money, but by law, I can't. He shot the broker.
He what?
Shot the broker over $500. You got to be so specific. People are crazy. So if that agent was specific, that agent might have been able to write something correctly enough. But yeah, over $500. You got to just set the right expectations. Be completely transparent. Be explicit as possible. It's really important. So what does that mean? This is one that I personally wrote. Repair improperly installed flashing on the right side of chimney. Well, that's pretty self-explanatory. Replace damaged siding on the left side of chimney. Replace trim at top of chimney on the front side under the steel top. Service system and remove Lennox pure air filter. Install a 1-inch filter in the filter grill located in the ceiling. Do you see how specific I am? Repair high voltage wire inside the air handler where copper is exposed. Replace cracked pane in the living room right side window. Replace damaged trim around the living room right side window. Repair gap between window and frame. Like, I'm just, replace garbage disposal, unclogged kitchen sink drain. Repair kitchen sink leak where drain attaches to the bottom left bowl. I mean, just, we even had the plumber evaluate the hot water heater element and set the hot water heater to 120 degrees. And then if the element is not working, we wanted you to replace it. That's how I write things. Repair or replace cracked left side of attic stairs. I did that, repair or replace, because one contractor said they couldn't repair it. They'd have to replace the whole thing. So I wanted to make sure, I don't care, just make sure it gets fixed. So that's kind of, here, please don't, and I'm just going to go through do's and don'ts real fast before I let you go and ask for any more questions. But do write an addendum if your buyer wants to negotiate, okay? Do not just list numbers and circle items and say see inspection or home inspection. Please, what that means is don't say, I love you. Don't say, please look at 1, 3, 5, 9, and 12 of the home inspection. You're not asking them to do anything. Because if the home inspection says the home inspector recommends you get a licensed electrician to take a look at these items. It tells you what's wrong with it, but it doesn't tell you how to fix it. So yeah, we'll look at it, and then your buyer's going to come to do like a walkthrough and going to be real pissed. I'm like, you didn't ask me to fix it, you asked me to look at it. But as a professional, I'm going to go back to Eric and say, Eric, so we looked at it. Can you please tell me what we want done with it? Because I don't want the deal to blow up for my buyer or my seller. All right. Do be specific and ask for repair or replacement, as you saw what I did. Do not say, see report, or seller, look at broken window. Do be polite. This is a collaboration between agents. This is the thing, y'all. You'll have some agents, and I don't know, maybe they woke up the wrong side of the bed. I know I do sometimes. But we can negotiate and be friendly. It doesn't have to be contentious. We can represent our buyers and sellers and still be professional because we all have the same goal. We all want to have the best interest for our clients, and we all want to make sure that we all can get on the same page to get to the closing table. Okay? And if you do have an issue with another agent being ugly or contentious, or call me. We can navigate that together. All right. It's funny because the next line says, do not be a jerk. The other agent will not want to work with you if they get emotional. So agents get emotional, don't they? Agents get emotional. And I'm telling you, there are times where I get emotional going, can you believe this? And I will also have people that I can vent to. But we all need venting partners. Your broker is a great person to vent, right? We're almost done. Everybody's stalking. So if you need to vent, call me and vent. And then I'll probably vent back. Like, well, how about this one? Let me one up you. We have. But here's the other thing that we've learned. A lot of agents get emotional. So I would rather you vent with me and then reground yourself so you can come in, because you know what happens when people negotiate emotionally? That's why they hire us. So they can take their emotions out of it. So if we're negotiating emotionally, when we're emotional, we're not logical. And are we doing the best we need to be doing for our buyers and sellers? No. So come vet to me, and then we will get back together and create a counter when we're grounded. All right. Do give other sides adequate time to process and get estimates. Here's the thing. If you send in a repair addendum, even if you send it on due diligence day 8, don't call them on day 10 and say, you got anything back for us yet? Well, if they did, they'd send it to you. They have 5 business days after the end of due diligence. Give them some time. Porch takes 48 hours to get back to us. So give people some time to be able to do what they need to do. Now, if you're coming up on the end of it, on that last day of the 5th day, I'd be like, hey guys, I haven't heard from you. What's going on? Okay. Respect timelines. We just talked about that. Do confirm receipt and get an acknowledgement of receipt. Do ask for paid invoices on completion of work. Okay, make sure you get that before closing, because remember, contractors can put a lien on people's houses and it doesn't matter who's the owner. So make sure you get paid invoices. Do encourage re-inspections. Do send a copy of the repair addendum and invoices to the attorney so the attorney can verify payment. And I think that's the end of my do and don'ts. I know it's a lot. What questions do you have for me?
One quick question. So on the repairs that you had, proposed repairs you were requesting on the addendum, it would be at the bottom of that you would put the deadline, right? Please respond or.
Well, so let's see. Let me go back to my repairs. Hold on. So this one, yeah, we don't have a respond by on this one.
You would put it, wouldn't you put it in the, like, where would you put that then?
I wouldn't, because I'm following my time frame within the contract.
I mean, not respond by, I'm sorry. If they say they'll do it.
It's right. So go to the first page right here. It says parties agree the repairs to be completed no later than blank business days.
There you go. Never mind.
Yeah.
So, Lori, real quick, will you speak to inspections, the situation of when you're well, it doesn't matter if you're the seller or the buyer, I think in this one, I'll figure it out as one saying it, but somebody did inspections, everybody could reach an agreement, the contract was released, cool, a new buyer comes to buy the house. Oh, y'all did have inspections? Can I see them?
All right. So here's the thing. If you are a listing agent, that's good. Thank you for bringing that up. That's a great point. So if you're a listing agent and you go ahead and have a deal blow up, anything that is material fact of nature, you're required to tell. And the seller is required to update that property disclosure with anything that they are not going to fix.
Knowledge of now, since that inspection.
Because they have knowledge, because you sent them the reports. Now, I would also tell you, if that seller refuses to update that property disclosure by law, you need to come to me immediately, and we may decide to let that seller go.
So if I'm a seller and we get Eric inspects, we have this, I have the report, and they go, forget it, we're not doing it.
They're not moving forward because you can't come to terms.
We have to update their property disclosure. Do we then also have to share that report?
No, but you need to go ahead and make sure that anything that's not previously disclosed, that they're not going to fix now that they know, is now re-disclosed on the property disclosure. And you need to make sure that everybody gets a copy of the updated property disclosure prior to entering into a new contract.
So what if my next agent says, the deal went bust, did you guys, what happened, was it ever inspected? Or, I don't know, if they see that it's the contract.
I would say it was, and the property disclosure has been updated accordingly.
Can I see the inspection report?
That was a discussion that you'd have to have with your seller. So, and then that would be a discussion you probably want to bring to me on a case-by-case basis. So my opinion is that if you disclose properly, then I'd be like, yes, here, I'd rather you know up front than like tie this house up off the market again. I think full disclosure is important. There might be a time where I would be like, well, if they fixed all the things on the report, then I might be like, no, because that's going to hurt. I mean, is it going to hurt the seller or is it going to help the seller? You know, the seller could come in and say, well, I'm going to fix everything and then we'll put it back on the market. We'll just do a temporary withdrawal. And then somebody says, why'd the deal fall apart? I'd be like, well, they just couldn't come to terms. Well, did they have inspections? Yep. Can I see the report? Well, it's not necessary at this point. We'd recommend that you get your own inspections because we updated everything. And that's why it was temporary withdrawn. And now everything's updated.
If the seller says they can have them.
Absolutely. It's not your choice, it's the seller's choice.
If they say no, then
Then you navigate around that.
They paid for them. Well,
No, they didn't pay for them, but you don't have to. It's like a third party. But I mean, you're not required to give that. You're required to represent the seller. I go by the school of thought that everything's full disclosure.
So I'm probably overthinking this, but on an inspection report, it's usually like 50 pages sometimes, or 35 things on 100, whatever. So how you would only have to disclose per the property disclosure as you read it, answer those questions. You wouldn't have to disclose all the little things.
Oh, that's a good question. Things that are on the property disclosure statement.
Unless you're asked. I mean, it just depends. Like if you have plumbing issues, do you have any plumbing issues? Well, if you're not going to fix it, now you know, yeah. What are they? Yeah, it says a place to write in what they are. So under other, like in the property disclosure, it says, well, give an explanation. So yeah, they give an explanation if it says something's wrong with it. If you're, let's say, hinge on the kitchen door, I mean, again,
That's a visible thing anyway.
it's more of latent defect, but I mean, I tell all my sellers, disclose everything. Disclose everything. Full disclosure. Don't keep anything behind. That's what I think. If you're going to ask me, I'm going to say disclose everything. It's better to be completely transparent, in my opinion, in this business.
But then people ask me that a lot, and then I'll have my sellers go, they can have them say, or the buyer would say, yeah, they can have them if they pay me what I pay to get them done. I guess that's.
The buyer said what?
Yeah, they can have those. I paid for them, but yeah, they can have them if they pay me for them.
Well, and I would tell the buyers, well, then maybe you shouldn't assign the contract because the contract says you're required in there to give them the inspections. So give them the inspections.
Oh, yeah. Right.
Are you going to recommend a couple of home inspection, heating and air, and termite people?
Yeah, and if you can go to Keller Williams Palmetto, they have, if you type in HVAC, everybody in this office you're going to come up with HVAC contractors, so you can actually go and see.
Oh, just ask out.
No, there's already people that ask. Go into the little search button and type in HVAC, and you'll see all the posts coming up saying, hey, who recommends this and who recommends that. Yeah, so you'll get a lot of different feedback from different people and why, and numbers and everything. Let's see what else. I was going to say something else and completely forgot.
So if you can recommend some,
I mean, I use Camner, I use Ledford's, I've used Terminex. They're only $75, so if people are on a budget, Terminex is great for CL100. I use here.
I love home inspection
you
one.
like home inspection one?
Love them. They have a thing now where you can get all three
Oh, okay, because you should do
inspections
HVAC
with
and-
one call.
Oh, okay.
Now they have a termite guy.
Oh, that's.
All of the three main inspections, all with one call.
I just did a list on mine. Now I'm like trying to find it.
See, this is my second time seeing this, and I'm going to learn new things.
So SC home inspections, Premier home inspections, Heritage home inspections, Pinpoint home inspection 1. Those are my go-tos. HVAC, Krantz, True Comfort, Cool Care, Brian's Heating and Cooling, Ledford's for CO 100, Sandy Run, Kramer Pest Control. I won't use the other people anymore after what they did to Brandon. Those are my go-tos.
That was so good.
I don't,
No,
but you can.
no, just,
Trying to think what else. I mean, there's so much during due diligence, y'all.
oh, I know,
What's that?
measuring the house, size, square footage, because, yeah.
Yeah, if you're gonna list a property, you better hire somebody to do that.
And you pay for that, or do you?
I personally think that is, I personally pay for it. That's part of my, my listing package. Yep. I think it's part of, I'd verify that. Unless they have an actual appraisal. If they have an appraisal on hand, then I'll use that. But I will not use anything from tax records. What else? I'll tell you what, though, I know what I was going to say. Negotiating. When Eric brought up, you have to redisclose. I use that a lot in my negotiation tactics, especially when I'm working for the buyer. And I'll say, hey, guys, listen, like the last thing you want to do is have to put this house back on the market after being off the market for 20 days. Now you go to find another buyer. Maybe you have a backup. Maybe you go into contract tomorrow, but now you have to tell them everything anyway. And they still have this due diligence period. Even if they're going as is, they have 10 business days. So how much is that overhead when in those 10 business days, we could be at the closing table for $5,000?
And that's another mortgage payment possibly that you have to pay.
You're done. Or you can risk going into contract over here, them doing their due diligence and beating you up more, or you have to go back on the market again. I mean, everything in this business is a gamble. But you just got to use things, and I use that. And 9 out of 10 times, I usually get what I want. It's just how you structure it and be like, listen. So there you go.
That's awesome, Lori. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Y'all do that, that she's not.